Hello Internet. Today we're going to be talking about net neutrality and specifically a video uploaded by Steven Chowder in December 2017. It's about 6 months ago from my point of view. And we're just going to be going over it and talking about what's wrong with it. Steven Chowder kind of comes from the right side of the political spectrum. I don't disagree with everything the right side says, but I definitely don't agree with everything either. He's framing it in a way where he's defending the corporations, because the name of the video is Net Neutrality, Why Big Corporations Support It. Alright, definitely not all big corporations. Alright, Verizon don't support it, Comcast doesn't, AT&T doesn't. In fact, they're lobbying to get rid of it. So clearly it's some corporation some of the time. He's way over exaggerating it, and he's trying to, I don't know why he's defending these companies. I hope he's getting paid for it, is what I hope, but he didn't disclose it, so frankly I don't know. I hope he's getting paid for it because that's who it interests best, are these large corporations like Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, Spectrum, anything that provides internet service pretty much would benefit from net neutrality going away. With that being said, right, in Venezuela, the corporations need to be defended in Venezuela, right? Because they're getting their land is taken away from them just because the government can. But in America, they don't. Especially Google, Amazon, the carrier companies, they are well off. In fact, they're probably taking advantage of the system at the moment, and Chowder does not need to defend them. All right? If anything, especially when it comes to Google, there needs to be some sort of monopoly law, because Google owns way too much, and they got their foot in so many doors. It reminds me a lot of the Rockefellers with Standard Oil back in the day. However, no one's ever broken up a tech company before for monopoly, so that makes it difficult. But once the bar is set, that'll make it a lot easier in the future to break up tech company monopolies. With all that being said, let's get into this video.
You can throttle conservative content. You can tell conservatives they can't upload. You can tell people who are politically incorrect that they can't upload. You can allow pedophiles to upload to YouTube Kids all you want, but you have to disclose it to your user base.
Chowder, it's not a have to, it's a should to. Have to kind of implies there might be, they're forced to. I don't think there should be a law for that. It's a fantastic idea that YouTube should do that. They should disclose a lot of stuff they don't disclose. Probably the majority of their business practices they should disclose, but they don't. And that's probably going to be a factor in the downfall of YouTube in the future. I vote BitChute, but we'll see.
Net neutrality. So before we move on, I get that this is a sensitive topic. I want you to answer the question of the day, but I want you to watch this entire video first.
Watch my entire video too?
Not only am I asking you, what's your opinion on net neutrality? Everyone's doing that, like, what's your opinion? But what's your opinion on today's sort of selective corporate outrage? Because that's what's surrounding net neutrality right now, is outrage over corporations, their control over the internet.
Corporations over control the internet. That's why net neutrality is in place, to keep corporations from throttle other companies that they think are competition or don't pay the bribe, alright? That's why net neutrality is there. It's to keep an even playing field for corporations, because if you don't have an even playing field, Verizon can throttle other companies they don't want to have, competing against them. Like, they can throttle, small business owners they think might be threatening their business model or something, and then it just effectively takes them out of the competition, right? And that's not fair. Net neutrality helps keep it more fair. Not perfectly fair, but more fair.
While ignoring the world's biggest corporations who are ardent supporters of net neutrality. And that's something that concerns me and gets a little lost in the cracks. Both sides have arguments with merit. So
supporting net neutrality has the best argument with the best supporting facts.
I want to kind of get into those who are very pro-net neutrality and why they believe so and why there's validity to it. Listen, I'm going to roll a clip here, and it's not because I don't like Philip DeFranco. I actually really like Philip DeFranco.
He's okay.
I think he's one of the few fair-minded people on the internet. He's been invited on the show. Hopefully we'll have him on soon. I'm actually rolling this clip of Philip DeFranco because he's talked about net neutrality for a long time, and I think he's a pretty good representative of how opposition to, I guess, sort of the current allowing of lapsing of legislation feels. So let's let him set up that side of the argument.
A certain cell service says, hey, if you go with us when you watch Netflix, that doesn't go towards your data cap. Or maybe it's with Hulu or whoever. Now imagine your broadband internet right in your home. All of a sudden you have Comcast. They say, hey, guess what? When you use Hulu, you get the top tier, the premium speed. And they have an incentive. They own a good percentage of Hulu. But then guess what? Netflix, Amazon Prime, those places don't get our fast lane for the internet. It's slower, it's clunkier. Maybe if Netflix or Amazon Prime, they pay us, we'll give them the fast lane. You gotta pay a tax if you want to go over our fast lane bridge. Imagine if Comcast or another ISP launched a competitor to YouTube, and then they could just slow down the speeds to YouTube for their customers. To which you could argue, and the chairman of the FCC now does, well, hey, if an ISP is going to do that, the market will decide we don't want Comcast. The market will keep companies honest and fair, and no. You know how many people have Comcast and they don't want Comcast, but they have to have Comcast because there aren't really any other option?
Okay, I like Philip DeFranco, but there's an irony there that we're looking at the same argument and seeing an entirely different conclusion.
Because you're biased, Chowder?
He's saying, could you imagine if your broadband company did what your mobile carrier company did? I'm going, could you imagine if broadband was finally as good as the mobile carrier plans out there? Exactly, right.
The mobile carrier plans aren't that great, Chowder, all right?
And he's talking about creating a competitor to YouTube. Yeah. And this is a guy who's been very outspoken, as we have, about YouTube selectively curating and censoring people. So I'm going to come back to that, which is also why I find it kind of odd when people just gloss over something. Here's clip B.
Google issued a statement saying the FCC's net neutrality rules are working well for consumers, and we're disappointed in the proposal released today.
Yep, Google, huge supporter of net neutrality. We'll come back to that and go, well...
Wow, a company that doesn't have anything to gain is for net neutrality. It's not a bad thing that Google is for net neutrality, but I don't think it's for all the right reasons that Chowder thinks it is.
Why? Because it shouldn't really affect them directly. Okay, few claims that come from net neutrality. Before I get to that, let me set up a worldview. Here's what I think is important, okay? And again, please just hold your thoughts. This is meant to be a discussion on net neutrality because there are reasonable voices on both sides of this issue.
There are reasonable arguments on both sides, so that definitely helps his side, which is he really wants to disagree with it, but he framed it in a way that we agree with it because the big companies agree with it, and then therefore the free market is good or something.
It is nuanced, and anytime you get into tech dialogue, people can get really confused. Oh, yeah. So we're going to try and avoid doing that. Here's the deal. Do you believe that human beings are inherently prone to corruption?
Do you think Google's a monopoly?
Yes? Okay, so do I. Do you believe that corporations are inherently prone to corruption?
Do you think the free market is a solution to everything?
Yes. Do you believe that people/corporations are inherently prone to corruption the bigger and more powerful they get?
Do you think we should have programs like the EPA in our government?
Yes, we both agree. Now, do you believe the only exception to that is YouTube, Google, Facebook, and the United States federal government?
There's no exceptions? Who said there was?
If not, you're going to have some apprehension about net neutrality, okay? That's where the worldview comes in. So let's look at it through that lens.
That's a silly worldview.
Here are some of the things that people claim with net neutrality. We need net neutrality because there aren't enough ISP choices, internet service providers.
It's not the choices. You could have a million choices, and they could all still throttle different companies, Chowder. It's not the choices, it's what the companies could do without net neutrality.
And the market, as I said, they don't have. It only has power if there are enough choices. Okay. Yeah.
Net neutrality only has power if there are choices. There could be one company and net neutrality would still be doing a good thing. There could be a million companies and net neutrality would still be doing a good thing. Internet provider companies.
Do you know who actually would most benefit and most love to see net neutrality repealed? Small rural ISPs. That's something a lot of people don't talk about. Just Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, it's easy to talk about big evil corporations and not talk about the smaller companies that would stand to benefit. So net neutrality can really harm smaller ISPs. Under net neutrality, as we have them now, ISPs have to submit proposals for any new technology, or I think it's new technology or business model. This is the exact quote. So on top of all the red tape, right, and all of the costs, the burdening costs, the FCC can also turn down proposals without giving the company any opportunity to appeal. Does that sound like fostering innovation? Does that sound like something that would encourage competition?
That's really vague. They could. Do they do that though? Do you have any evidence of them just flat out shutting them off for no reason? You need to get more into detail when you get into these sort of things. They can, whenever, there's a new business model, they can just throw it out the window if they want. But why? What's their incentive to do that? Are they going to throttle someone? Was that the new business model? That's probably why they threw it out, Chowder. But you don't reference anything, so it could be either. You have to bring up you have to cite this stuff before you just go off assuming that the government is shutting down innovation and stuff with red tape, which is just, he wants the free market to not have any regulations.
We also hear that we need to impose monopoly laws on ISPs in areas where there's little competition.
If you live in rural Texas and the only ISP is available to you is Comcast, so it's either internet with Comcast or no internet, you kind of want some monopoly laws so they're not screwing you over. They could charge you triple because they're the only option. That's not fair to the consumer.
So this goes back to kind of telecom communication companies, right? Title II, regulating them like that. A lot of people have talked about regulating YouTube and Facebook and Twitter as telecommunication companies under Title II, and I've defended them and said, no, I don't think that anyone should force them to treat content equally. But that ties into why there's a reason that they actually support net neutrality. We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that because I don't have a reason right now.
So there's actually this article from Fast Company, and this is what they write about. They write about a company. What's the name of the company? I think it's
Cable One. Cable One.
Cable One,
Yep.
right? So they talk about Cable One covering being the only option, right, for broadband in rural areas. Okay. And so this is an article that they write about. They talk about how if they were regulated under Title II as telecommunication companies, well, the government would actually be able to set the rates because Cable One keeps raising the prices. Now, they keep raising the prices. Why? Because they're the only one there. So they say that they're raising prices. Now, that being said, their prices are somewhere around $80 per month, which is actually pretty much right middle of the road. It's not like it's completely outlandish. Right, sure. But these articles that have been sent to me by Fast, I've had this sent to me a dozen times. Think about this for a second. Let's assume, okay, the smaller rural ISP, Cable One, is evil and their only goal is to screw people, and that's why they're jacking up prices.
Evil, or they just want to make the most amount of money. I'm gonna go, if by evil you mean make the most amount of money possible, then sure, they're evil, Chowder.
What happens if the government does set rates on Cable One? Let me ask you this, genuinely, what do you think happens? Do you think that if there's a set ceiling, Cable One is going to be providing better internet? Do you think they're going to be upgrading their servers? Do you think they're going to be upgrading, their abilities? They're going to be upgrading their speeds? They're going to be creating better packages? Or if the rates are set, do you think it's more likely that they're just going to say, all right, this is where we are? And let me ask you this, do you think it's more or less likely if the rate is set in that area, let's say rural Mississippi, for another competing ISP to come in and make a killing putting Cable One out of business?
Why wouldn't it be set for the other cable company coming in? The whole purpose of having them set is to make sure they don't overcharge because they're the only provider. So if another provider comes in, I would imagine that there's legislation in there that the set would disappear because now there's competition so people can choose between the two and not just the one or no internet.
Where is it more or less likely for those people to get better internet service? So another claim that we hear a lot is if we repeal net neutrality, there will be separate packages, right? This is what Philip DeFranco, a lot of people talk about. Internet access, video streaming, emails, that'll be split up, that they'll be throttled, right? This is a slippery slope without a lot of support. There are only 2 instances, and they're a little more complicated than people let on. I think it was Comcast with Netflix, and AT&T hit a huge fine for throttling people if they're unlimited, putting them back down to slower speeds.
That doesn't seem too complicated to me. They get sued because they're throttling, and that goes against net neutrality.
But all of that was corrected, not because of legislation, but because it was immediately made public, and it was so toxic that people started dropping their plan.
Toxic. Or it was against the law, and net neutrality helped enforce it. Even if they had zero publicity in mainstream media, the net neutrality is there to keep that from happening.
The market was pissed.
The market was pissed. Mobile data plans, remember how they used to be so extremely limited? They were and people now are fearing that broadband packages will be like that without net neutrality.
I like that cut. It's like, people fear this. Rightly so, they do. Yeah. And then he just cuts away like that's the point.
Where have you seen more competition? Where have you seen your rates become more competitive, your plan become better? Your mobile data plan or broadband? What you're paying for right now. Because now mobile plans are unlimited.
Unlimited, it depends what carrier you have, but unlimited doesn't always mean unlimited. I had an unlimited plan, but after like, I don't know, 5 gigabytes or something, they start charging you $10-15 per extra 2 gigabytes. I think I was with AT&T at the time. It's bullshit, all right? It's unlimited asterisks, and then you have a certain amount of gigs you can use, at least with AT&T.
Faster and faster speeds thanks to a free market.
These guys in the free market, it's like Standard Oil was created because of the free market, and the government had to come and break them up, all right? So clearly the free market isn't the solution to everything, all right? I'm sick of hearing this. In Venezuela, in 2018, they could use some free market. They could use less, it's not even regulations, it's just the government land appropriating. That's not regulations, that's government stealing land, all right? They could use, it's not even the free market, it's just a government that doesn't steal stuff. Free markets need to be regulated, otherwise they create monopolies, and if governments go the other way, then you end up with Venezuela in 2018, at least. Probably gonna get worse too, but we're talking about net neutrality, not about Venezuela.
Another claim that we hear a lot is that we have to have net neutrality because big evil corporations.
I like that cut too, because big evil corporations, and then he just cuts it like, yeah. Again, it depends on your definition of evil, but corporations want to make the most amount of money possible, and if screwing over the customer makes them more money, then they'll do it. Standard Oil. Look at history. It's pretty obvious. Google's doing it. ISPs are trying to do it by taking away net neutrality. So let's stop the ISPs from doing that and also break up Google monopoly while we're at it too.
I think, well, because a big company supports it, it must be bad. But then there's another big company that supports it. And in this case, you have the world's biggest companies in Google and Facebook who, by the way, unlike the ISPs, they have a long and storied history of dishonest censorship and throttling and content favoritism.
They still do.
Facebook alone, I don't know how many tens of times. And this begs the question, why is Google, YouTube, and Facebook, why are these giant companies so adamant about supporting net neutrality?
Because they can't make money off of it, Chowder. It doesn't directly affect them. They are not ISPs, so these laws wouldn't affect them. In fact, it might hurt them because Verizon and the other ISPs could throttle their content. I find it unlikely because Google's a monopoly and they have a lot of weight in the free market arena. So they could probably push back against Verizon and stuff, but they don't want to pay Verizon extra just because Verizon can charge them extra. That's why Chowder. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart. They want to save their wallet.
Here's something else crazy. Big companies like Google, they're not really customers of ISPs.
Google is not a customer of ISPs. All their content is on the internet, and ISPs provide the internet. That is untrue, Chowder.
They connect directly to the web, directly through internet exchange points. So it doesn't directly affect them. But you'd be hard-pressed to find people who would support regulating YouTube, Google, certainly small government libertarians as a telecommunications company under the guidelines that would basically force them to allow all content to be uploaded and distributed equally. But I would support, and this is a big step for a libertarian, small government libertarian like me, under Title II, if we agree to transparency laws, which is a big part of the repealing of net neutrality right now. It's, okay, listen, first off, there are still antitrust laws, there are still monopoly laws, so if you're to throttle, which you're not supposed to do, you have to let your customer base know. Yeah. That's a big part of this legislation. That's a big part of this change, is transparency is being given the priority. Now, I would not support regulating YouTube, Facebook, Google under Title II if it's, you have to treat all content equally, but...
So... that's not a good example, because you have to treat all content equally. That's like treating every single video equally. The idea is treating every single bit on the internet that's uploaded or downloaded equally, not because certain bits come from Netflix or certain bits come from Google or whatever.
I would. I would support putting them under that kind of regulation if it just means that they have to be transparent with people using YouTube. Hey, listen, you can throttle conservative content. You can tell conservatives they can't upload. You can tell people who are politically incorrect that they can't upload. You can allow pedophiles to upload to YouTube Kids all you want, but you have to disclose it to your user base. And that's why when you put the puzzle pieces together,
When you get all woke,
and you think about it, you go, hold on a second, why would YouTube and Google and Facebook be such huge supporters of net neutrality?
because it helps their pocket. And as a company, that's pretty much all you're looking at is your profits and costs. And they don't want to pay more, so they support net neutrality.
If it didn't affect them. I think it opens the door to people saying, hey, we can regulate an industry here just by ensuring that they are transparent. Basically, the government is a referee at that point. The government is a referee with its whistle saying, hey, you're breaking the rules there. We're going to put you in the penalty box. On the other hand, you have a fence right here, right? You have a line. So people talking about evil corporations, you're saying, okay, this is the big evil corporations are against net neutrality. Okay, here's the line.
Internet provider companies are against net neutrality, and pretty much everyone else doesn't want to pay more, so they're against it.
On one side you do. You have Verizon, you have AT&T, you have Comcast, you have small rural ISPs as well. You have a lot of companies, okay? That's on this side of the line. On the other side, you do have Google, YouTube, Facebook, and potentially the federal government. Now, the government is not a referee. It's not enforcing transparency, it's picking sides.
On the one hand, you have the Rockefellers with Standard Oil. On the other side, you have the big government trying to break them up. They're picking sides.
They have buddies in their pocket, the biggest companies in the world. So if you want to talk about monopolies, I would certainly say that Facebook and YouTube has more of a monopoly on the transfer of information, certainly media, than Cable
So
One.
much more.
Yeah. Than Cable One, providing 700,000 households in Missouri. And they are so adamantly pro-net neutrality because precisely if people say, wow, we can actually fix this industry, we can regulate it without stepping in, just making sure that they're following the rules, just making sure that they're disclosing with their customers what they're doing, guess what? You'd have a lot of people. As a matter of fact, you'd have people lining up to say, let's apply those standards to YouTube or Facebook.
YouTube and Facebook do not provide the internet. They provide videos, completely different. YouTube and Facebook can regulate as much as they want. They can ban people, they can censor all they want. Sadly, it would be nice if YouTube and Facebook disclosed who they ban and why. That would be pretty nice information to have. But I don't think we should apply net neutrality to them because they do not provide the internet. They provide a very small sliver of the internet to people.
No. Let's not do that. Let's look at the evil cell phone companies who gave you unlimited data and gave you free hotspots and gave you free Spotify and free T-Mobile, Netflix downloading because...
Unlimited is asterisks and then some amount of data. At least the plan I had for AT&T. All right, Chowder, so stop making them these like fantastic people or fantastic corporations, all right? They want money, all right? They provide a service, they get money for it, all right? It's pretty fair, and sometimes they make a monopoly because they buy out all the competition and they can jack up their prices to whatever they want because there's no one else you can go to.
They're the bad guys. They're the big evil corporations. Google, Facebook, we're the mom and pop shop. You don't need any transparency with us. This is why it comes back down to the worldview.
Who is saying that Google is the mom and pop? They are a monopoly, Chowder. All right? Google is a search engine. And Google owns a lot of other companies, so they promote those companies in their search engine. That is really unfair to people who aren't Google. All right? They're not mom and pop. They pretend to be that, and that's slowly kind of going away, especially if you go to YouTube, because they're just banning anything they deem not to be mom and pop, and that includes like wars in Syria and Crimea. It's ridiculous.
Do you believe that anyone is exempt from the proclivity toward human corruption? I don't. Whether that's Comcast or Verizon, just like people who support net neutrality, I agree with you, but I also don't believe that Google, Facebook, and YouTube have pure motives here.
You don't have to be for net neutrality and believe Google isn't a monopoly. I don't see the connection, Chowder.
Nor the big government legislators who want to have their hands in the pocket.
Big government how do you make money in enforcing net neutrality? What a way to end it. Just, oh yeah, by the way, governments, you know, they make money enforcing net neutrality somehow, even though they don't. Maybe he's talking about this when they got sued for like $15,000, which is nothing to Verizon, Comcast, AT&T. That's nothing. It's just a little like slap on the wrist and say, don't throttle, please. And then, but they can sue for more if they keep doing it, and that's why they don't, or didn't when net neutrality was in place. He acts like the government is its own business competing with the other companies. It's not. It's there. Well, on paper, it's there to enforce fair rules, so there's no monopolies and other bad situations like the EPA. You know, they stop polluting and stuff. Anyway, hope you guys liked it. Please, I don't know how this video has 26K upvotes and 6.4K downvotes. I don't see why. But make a video about my video and tell me why I'm wrong. I'd like to know, because I don't think Steven Crowder is on the right side of history on this one. I think 1,000 years from now, people will look back at this video and to see him defending corporations that don't need to be defended. Hopefully he's getting paid, but I don't know one way or the other. But it's a possibility.
Hey, did you like this video? Of course you did.
Wrong.
You made it to the end of the video. I have a couple things to say before we part ways. Feel free to edit my videos any way you want. Preferably link them back to the original video. If you can afford it, I'm on Patreon. Check out my Twitter, Instagram, and other channels. My grandma helped finance the Canon 80D I'm using, and all other equipment I used will be linked in the description, along with all other relevant links. Have hope that the future will be brighter.